Once again, last 9 times Damian Lillard has faced Westbrook, it's been humiliating for Westbrook. And once again, the better player surfaced with a W last night. Brought to you by Mercedes-Benz, the best or nothing. I want to hear this. So, all right, Mr. Westbrook in Houston. I mean, 9 times they've met in the last 2 years. It's 7 wins for Dame.
I'm already annoyed.
I mean, it's incredible. I mean, what more do you need?
Okay. Listen, I don't know why you insist on doing this. My guess is you're just obfuscating to try to avoid giving Carmelo Anthony his due after you've crushed Syracuse legend, greatest U.S. Olympic basketball player of all time for the better part of 10 years. But let's do this. Let's talk Russ and Harden. Because one's the 9th best player in the world. Russ and Harden. Russ and Lillard. One's the 9th best basketball player in the world. One's the 11th best basketball player in the world. It's very, very close. But I think this year is a great example as to why it's totally legitimate to hold Russ in equal, if not higher, esteem than Dame. Dame dealt with injuries this year around his team did. They didn't have their full roster. They didn't have a ton of talent. How'd that work out for him? Because they were 8 games under 500 headed into the bubble. When Russ had KD leave, what did he do? He put a team on his back, averaged a triple-double the first of 3 straight years, and carried them to the playoffs. Now, if you're making the argument, if you have a stacked roster who would better contribute to winning, you can make that argument for Dame. But to me, I'm going to use 2 of my media mentors, one from younger in life and one from right now. Who's the better broadcaster? Bob Costas or Colin Cowherd?
Bob.
Well, I guess it depends on what you're trying to do. Right. If you're hosting the Olympics, with respect to you, Colin,
yeah.
I'll take Bob.
Yeah.
If it's like, hey, I got 3 hours and a microphone and a new network, I'll take you.
Yeah.
So there you go. Exactly. So if you're going to have a stacked roster, maybe Dame's efficiency wins out. But if you need someone to take on the workload himself and make sure you're never a 30-win team as the Blazers were pacing to be, well, then maybe Russ is the answer.
So the Clippers lost last night, and I could literally, as I'm watching it, I'm thinking, oh, Nick literally went and got a second Bud Light. He is having the time of his life, and to this I say, the Clippers lost to Minnesota, Chicago, Atlanta, Phoenix, Sacramento twice. They lost to Memphis by 26. They didn't care about the regular season in L.A. They sure as hell don't care about it in the bubble. Like, this is who they are, right? Like, we know they don't care about that game against Phoenix.
Man, I can't imagine what a wonderful life your amazing children must have had whenever they bring home a test. If they get an A, they were trying, and if they failed, well, they didn't care about it. Like, either way, they win. It's just great. If you operate under the premise of whenever a team loses, they didn't care, well, then every team's awesome. And my question would be, when are you going to start caring? Like, if you didn't care, maybe don't play Kawhi 37 minutes, which for him is essentially 2 games worth of playing. If you don't care, maybe don't rush Lou Williams back when he's fresh off his trip to the strip club in the wings. But he did play. You're a team built to stop perimeter scoring, and a perimeter scorer dropped 35 on your head, primarily guarded by your future GOAT Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. Like, at some point, the warning signs have to matter. And I guess they're not going to matter for America until the Clippers are down 3-2 in the second round of the playoffs. And it's like, oh, wait, they didn't care in the regular season. So they didn't build chemistry. They didn't flush out their rotation fully. They didn't ever get an answer for a real interior rim protector. And so why they've been treated, like, look, even at the end of the game, it's like, how did they get back in the game? Paul George airballs a 3 that Kawhi's lucky enough to get the rebound for. Like, they're a good, not great team that's been anointed for reasons I will never understand, and people aren't going to believe it until they're going home sometime probably before the conference finals.
Well, we disagree there. So I'm watching last night, they put the standings up. They put the standings up in the West, and you know, the East doesn't matter because somebody from the West will win it. So they put the standing up in the West, and Memphis just lost one of their better players a couple days ago, Jaren Jackson. So Memphis is in big trouble.
Jaren Jackson. Yeah,
he's out. So he's their second best player to Ja Morant. So they got troubles. And Portland now, Nurkic is back. Melo's playing very well. I acknowledge it took him 36 years old, but he finally decided to get on a treadmill. And the point being is that, let's be honest about this. When's the last time you looked, Portland's going to be the 8, LA the 1? You have to acknowledge, this is probably the most dangerous 8 seed. Now with no Avery Bradley for the Lakers or Rondo, that's a frightening first round for the Lakers, right?
Well, listen, of the possible 8 seeds, I think Portland could be the most the most problematic, if you will. New Orleans also, by the way, New Orleans might steal this thing. Their last 5 games, you should pull it up. I think it's twice against Sacramento. They get Washington. I think they get Orlando and San Antonio. I think that's their last 5. They could go 5-0 now that Zion's playing. But here is the problem for Portland in a first-round series against the Lakers. If you were to line up all 30 teams in the NBA and say front of the line, who is the roster most equipped to slow down LeBron? Front of the line probably be the Clippers because they have Kawhi and Paul George, Marcus Morris. They build their team around that. The very last team in line would not be the Knicks, would not be the Hawks. It would be Portland now that Trevor Ariza is not in the bubble. They do not have a single person who can guard LeBron. Their starting lineup, I guess it would be Carmelo Anthony, who I know you think so highly of now. They coming off the bench. Gary Trent Jr. has been a revelation three-point shooting-wise. He can't guard LeBron. They don't have a single person on their roster to guard LeBron to even slow him down. And so, while, the Lakers would, I'm sure, prefer to face the Suns or the Kings and have an easy 5-game sweep, LeBron's clearly easing himself into the bubble, and if you want him to be up and running by round 2, give him Portland in round 1. He'll average 35 a game in that series because they got no answer for him whatsoever. So that's the long way of saying they don't scare me. Could it be a gentleman's sweep instead of a sweep? Sure, but the lack of Ariza kills them as far as even having a single person to throw at LeBron James.
So years ago when LeBron went from Miami to Cleveland again, he moved off of Andrew Wiggins. They had a chance to draft Andrew Wiggins, but the word was that LeBron didn't like Wiggins because he didn't have any dog in him. He wasn't going to be that. And for the record, sure, LeBron's been right. I believe that dog is developed, somewhere between 7 years old and 12. And if you don't have it, you don't develop it. I mean, if you take Magic and LeBron's DNA, it's been leadership first day in the league. If you take the late Kobe and MJ's relentlessness, obsessiveness, it starts in childhood on, first day in the league. Anthony Davis is talented. Nick, he disappears in fourth quarters. He shoots like 40% this year in the fourth. He doesn't have any dog in him, and that's what wins in the postseason. Aren't you a little concerned? 4 times against the Clippers, he evaporated in the fourth.
And despite that, listen, the Lakers were tied with 6 minutes left first game of the year. Second game of the year against the Clippers, it comes down to a ridiculous overturned call on LeBron's potentially game-tying shot, and they won the next 2. I would be concerned if Anthony Davis had to be your best player, but he doesn't. And he is a way overqualified Robin. And so what you're going to have is Anthony Davis playing the biggest games of his life. Anthony Davis have some of, I'm sure, the biggest failures and successes he's ever had in the NBA in these playoffs. And I think he'll come out on the other side a champion and a changed player. But when you have America, I guess, and I wouldn't think you would be part of it, has forgotten the single most reliable thing in sports is LeBron James in the playoffs over the last decade. What he gives you night in, night out. The last time we saw him in the playoffs, he carried an atrocious Cavs team to the finals, culminating in the 51-point performance in Game 1 before he broke his hand out of frustration. You don't need Anthony Davis to take over in the fourth because LeBron will do that. And I think Anthony Davis maybe has a little more dog than you're giving him credit for, but I think whatever it is, he will learn and gain so much from this deep championship playoff run that in the years to come, he'll be able to be that fourth quarter guy that right now the Lakers are relying on LeBron to be.
Yeah, I was going to ask you a question about the Buccaneers, but you have disagreed with me on everything. There's no chance I think it's funny. I was saying this about Tampa Bay. Last year was very predictable. Young roster, new coach, new coordinator. I love their defensive coordinator and their head coach. They were bad early, 2-6. In the second half of the season, the young roster, oh, they were 5-3 and really only were beaten by the Saints and the Texans. Those are very good teams with quarterbacks with some real star power. I look at this Tampa team and I think Todd Bowles second year, Arians second year, maybe the best blocking tight end, Tom. I look at Tampa today and I think, I start looking around the NFC. Everybody's got a hold. Can Carson Wentz stay healthy? Russell Wilson's basically bailing out bad line play. Aaron Rodgers. Do we know what Matt LaFleur can do? Can you at least acknowledge Tampa's going to be a playoff team with Brady? They're going to be a playoff team.
Well, I'll go a step further and not quite as far. Tampa has, last 6 weeks of the year, they had a top 5 defense. I like Arians and Leftwich. I agree with you entirely on that. Gronk will be good for them even if he's not vintage Gronk. They might have, certainly it's in the argument, the best pair of receivers in football. And they improved the offensive line. So the question just is, Colin, are the Buccaneers a quarterback away from being a Super Bowl contender? They thought so. And so they think they brought that quarterback in. I think Tom Brady's 43 years old, and we have seen significant deterioration each of the last 3 years, from MVP to good but not great to downright bad last year. If Tom Brady is what you and many others think he will be this year, the Bucs can win 11, 12 games and be a Super Bowl contender. But if they're not, it will be because of Brady. Because I agree with every point you made. They have flushed out this roster. The defense surged at the end of the year. They're not going to be kneecapped by interceptions like they were last season. So, let's just see what, Tampa Bay can do. And I'm excited to see it. Maybe I'll be wrong. I got nothing against Brady. I think he's got some curious choices in his social group and friends. But aside from that, I got no problem with Brady. I want to see him do it. And we'll be able to see because he's on an excellent roster. I agree with you there.
Look at him. He looks 31 years old. He is his body shape. He's just very, very good. Listen, you and I we don't agree on a lot. We don't. Our lifestyles are different.
Yeah.
Our what we at night what we drink is different. Some guys I go to bed early.
Did you finish that? Did you drink that bottle of tequila I left you?
I had a small.
I left
sip.
you an unopened bottle. Oh, that's a lie. That's a lie. By the way, I'm glad you're incorporating into the show all-time Chiefs great and champion LaShawn McCoy. I assume he'll go into the Hall of Fame as a Chief since that's who he won a Super Bowl with. Just had to fit that in.
Get out of here. Nick Wright, first things first. Good seeing you.
See
buddy.
ya. Bye.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.